Well, the Cannes Festival of Creativity is officially over for 2025, but everyone traveling home over the weekend is probably still writing up their notes. Now, during the event, I was lucky to catch up at the end of each day with my friend and head of the Digital Shelf Institute, Lauren Livak, as well as fellow retail media industry commentator, Colin Lewis, to process the rapid-fire insights and spot some patterns that might otherwise get lost in the Cannes chaos. So today I'm sharing a recap that Lauren, Colin, and I recorded on Wednesday of last week, covering everything from B2B retail media to the ad tech sophistication gap. Now, I want to point out that this recording is actually part of Lauren's podcast called the Unpacking the Digital Shelf podcast. And I suggest if you enjoy this conversation, she's running a recap of all of our conversations from the week over on that show. So certainly go and check out Unpacking the Digital Shelf. Now let's listen into our conversation.
Hello everyone, day 3 of Cannes. We made it, we're halfway through. I'm Lauren.
I'm Colin.
I'm Kiri.
And we are here to give you our recap for what we learned today. All right, Kiri, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so we were all in attendance at the Mirakl Cabana today, and there were 2 research reports that were shared. One from BCG, Daniel Gospinov. You got that right when you introduced him.
I couldn't believe it. Difficult pronunciation, correct for once.
Well done. So from BCG, he presented 6 questions for scaling retail media outside the US. So I'll just share 2 takeaways from this. The top-cited reason for retailers to invest in retail media was to tap into net new funds, particularly from the brand budget. So, you know, a lot of the criticism of retail media is that it's just shopper marketing or it's just trade marketing moving over. And retailers already understand that to be successful, they can't just be robbing Peter to pay Paul, they need to be tapping into that brand budget. And one thing I thought was really interesting from BCG's proposed solutions here is to actually have within your retail media sales team a team, or I guess at least one person that deals with brand marketing, someone who speaks that language. And this is something that I've heard from the industry, is that, you know, within retail media network teams, not everyone has a media sales background, and especially not really a brand marketing background. So you really need someone who's able to talk that talk.
To translate between the teams so that you're making sure you're going towards the same end goal.
It's the single biggest problem I see when I'm talking to retailers. They don't realize they're in the media business, and then the people they're talking to don't realize they're in the marketing business.
Yeah.
And I really loved what he was talking about, roles and org structures, and how you have to have the right structure to communicate on the brand side and the retailer side. I'm super passionate about that. And
You've done a lot of content.
Done a lot of research around that, and it really makes a lot of sense, right? You need to your point, Kiri, you need to interpret and translate, but you also have to know who owns the budget.
Yeah.
You need to know who owns the decision, and you have to have both parties come to the table on the retailer and the brand side to do that together.
You know, I see a lot of people move over from they run a RMN, or they're in a senior role at an RMN, they're moving to the tech side because the tech vendors understand, okay, to sell our technology to retailers, we need someone who used to be at a retailer. Retailers need to understand, to sell media, we need someone who has been in media and bought and sold media in the past. So I don't know, I think we're going to get there eventually.
The other thing I really liked about that talk was he talked a lot about collaborations and partnerships. And that's a big theme for me at Cannes this year, right? Like, we're all here, retailers, brands, agencies, tech providers, like we all need to work together to collaborate. And he talked a lot about that as success for retail media. What do you think, Colin?
Collaboration can mean a multitude of things, and I always say when we're talking about collaboration, we need to be much more specific about what that is, because your version of what collaboration is different to my version. So I always think it like roles and responsibilities, races, being quite specific on that, but also realizing that that particular approach may be useful for this year, but may change again for next year. And building in that flexibility is obviously difficult for the individual because they're, you know, it's their job, and you're saying, no, you need to be flexible. I mean, who wants to hear that? So it's a very interesting world, I find.
Colin, what were your takeaways today?
Well, I had three big things happen to me today, but one was I had a long, well, I was going to say coffee. It was an ice cold coffee with Steef Demersman, who's the head of Amazon Advertising Europe, who is a really great guy with a very exotic Belgian name. So we just call him Steef. And he is a great guy. And we were discussing ad tech in detail, and he had a great insight. He said, you know what, marketing directors are going to need to understand ad tech. And this guy's got an amazing background. And he said, I'm pretty good, but even today, he says, I was at some meetings and I got schooled myself. So marketers need to understand ad tech and how it's plugged together. The second big thing I did was I went to the Nectar 360 Summit, which was fantastic, like a huge step from last year, which was a huge step up in the previous year. And they launched Nectar 360 Pollen, and it is something that's very close to my heart. So it's basically a combination of audience insights, media planning, activation, optimization, and measurement in one single platform. And you can do it in on-site, off-site, in-store. So regular readers of my content will know that I talk about the likes of Amazon Marketing Cloud, Insights, Walmart's until an nth degree detail, because when I talk to people, they don't really get what's going on. And actually, when I see what Nectar have just done with Pollen, it's basically a thing that joins everything up, that enables you to get insights, activate campaigns and everything, and roll in AI into it. That is the future. Everybody's going to have one of these regardless. Oh, and the other thing I did was went down to just meet Joe, who's the head of Lowe's from the Lowe's marketplace as well, and Joe Cano, and he's just speaking right now. Very, very interesting what Lowe's are doing, because they're building a DIY business in the US, the second largest after Home Depot. And when you hear what they've been doing with marketplaces and how that scaled their business and how they've been using that, particularly in B2B trade, that was the interesting bit.
That's interesting.
Because you're like, okay, yeah, consumer, no, tapping into the tradies, as they say in Australia, and tapping into their needs through an app, online delivery. You're like, okay, I see that. That's going to be amazing. And then layering retail media over that as well, but in a B2B context. Very interesting.
I think that's a great point. There's been more B2B this year than last year. Would you agree?
Ooh.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's been. You can see the maturity. The conversations that we're having here now, they're very different to last year, because people kind of know. I know what this is, and now there's another layer and another layer to add in the whole time.
Agreed. The other thing, Kiri and I were able to sit and watch Andy Jassy.
The creative of the year?
Yeah, the media man.
Oh, sorry.
Media person
that
of the
was
year.
that was a mistake on my side when I first mentioned it the other day. Media person of the year.
Yeah, so we heard him speak, but one of the things we both loved that he said is, speed is a leadership decision. So he was talking about being able to fail and test and learn and move quickly and be able to help your consumers and move faster. And that really struck both of us. Kiri and I looked at each other, because
you were running through the auditorium at the same time. No?
Yes, we were running to our next meeting at Cannes. No, because that's a huge message for both the retailers who are moving a bit slowly sometimes to get to where they need to go, and also brands who take a long time to make change because they're bigger and larger, and they need to be more comfortable with failure and test and learn. So that really struck me.
If Amazon at its scale
can do
that, then yeah, it is a decision.
Talking to Steef a couple of months ago, the guy I met today from Amazon Advertising, he had a very interesting insight. I said, Steef, is this working in Amazon? Is that really like a high stress? Feels like a high stress thing looking at it from the outset. And he said, no, we have a very sort of rational approach to the world. You've got your set of KPIs and you deliver around your KPIs, not outside of the KPIs. And you're like, right, okay. And he said, yeah, so it's actually, it's you work hard and it's high pressure, but it's not, what do I do next here? So they have a very rational approach, which, when you think about this leadership thing and how they approach the way of communicating, which you've got to write things down, you can't do a PowerPoint. It's a very rational approach, so you can see why they're winning.
Yeah, I agree. And they have a no bureaucracy email address that they created, where people could email in and they could say, at Amazon, they could say, like, where was their bureaucracy? And they changed over 400 different processes because of that. So they're really, very focused on being able to be efficient and move with speed.
Cool.
And then last thing I feel like I have to mention, Kiri spoke on a panel today at the Women in Retail Media Collective, and it was awesome. And there were a bunch of amazing female leaders, but one of the things that I really loved that someone said is lean into what differentiates you. And I feel like that is a theme for the future with AI too, right? Because you need to lean into what value you bring outside of tech, the connections you bring, who you are as a human. And I just really loved that. And I thought that would be a good one to bring up.
That's a great one, and I think it also applies to retailers and brands as well,
Yeah.
and particularly what I see with the retailers and the way that they're building their RMNs is leaning into what makes you different, your audience, what the USP you have for your advertising partners. I think it's a great takeaway.
And using creativity to be able to do that. Go ahead, Colin.
One of the things that I get asked to do coaching every now and then, and the line I use, which I learned from somebody who coached me, was this line is, what did you come from the factory with? So for the individuals out there, it's like, what's the thing you're naturally good at that you find kind of easy that everybody else kind of finds hard? So the line I'd leave you all with is like, if you're talking about uniqueness and you're talking about all this sort of thing, a very simple question to ask yourself is, what's the thing you find easy to do that everybody else finds hard? Well, this team here, we find speaking and talking like this reasonably straightforward. Lots of people don't. So what did you come from the factory with, and work on that?
I love that. Great
it.
way to close. All right, Day 3. We will be back tomorrow for Day 4.